Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have finally remade the lobby, so ICLEN up against NV. Hopefully this time Ladjo will be able to load in. I think he had a few internet issues on his end. He still is the last one to load. So ICLEN v NV, it's a grudge match as NV were able to knock ICLEN down to losers bracket, so ICLEN had to claw their way back up, eliminating several other teams along the way. And so it should be interesting to see how these teams go head to head, as I believe this is ICLEN's full roster with Pengu playing as their safe lane farmer. And now that they have a feel for how NV like to play, especially since NV don't have their regular safe lane farmer, Tosai Segure, should be interesting to see how both teams decide to play it out. So ICLEN, they've got first pick, so it will be interesting to see what hero decides to let slip through the first banning stage. We have been seeing Tinker get slip through the draft a few number of times, and so ICLEN, they don't have to ban out the Tinker, so they might actually choose to ban another hero like a Viper or a Razor instead, to force Plantronics NV in order to ban out the Tinker or to let the Tinker slide. And so Plantronics NV, we could be seeing something like a Tidehunter as well as a Faceless Void ban. Those are two very powerful offlane heroes you usually don't want to give away, since the Void gives you that drafting flexibility. And they're banning out Carl's second favorite hero. The first is the Invoker, the second is that Ember Spirit. I mean, his hero profile image is exactly the same as his Dota profile. And so Plantronics NV banning out that Faceless Void. You know, both teams giving away the Tinker got an immediate Tidehunter first pick. And Tidehunter, he's currently the most powerful offlane hero in the game because he has such a huge amount of flexibility and versatility in the role that he plays. Especially on the Radiant offlane, it's difficult to dislodge him from lane, especially with the Anchor Smash. And with the fact that if you pick a soft offlane, or if you pick a soft support duo where they don't have enough hard CC to be a lockdown and kill the Tidehunter, he could just walk all over them. Whenever one of the supports goes to pull, he plays very aggressively against the other. And if the supports ever leave him alone, they rotate to gank the mid lane, Tidehunter can stall all over the enemy carry, so he provides a huge amount of pressure on the enemy team at all stages of the game. And if for whatever reason you are able to shut down and kill Tidehunter and prevent him from either finding his farm, he could always stack and clear out Ancient, so he's got that comeback mechanic, which very few offlaners do have. So another one, for example, is the Bat Raider, with the sticky Napalm Firefly in the jungle, but of course that has been nerfed. So we've got the Shadow Shaman as well as a Razor pick coming out from Plantronics, and they love to play very aggressively with their tri lane. They might actually go for a Shadow Shaman Wraith Mage combinations. The combination I've seen them play the last few times. And so Razor, he's basically a Swiss Army knife made of kinky lightning. He gives you a massive amount of versatility, because he plays very similarly to the Viper. You throw him in a 1v1 matchup, you're guaranteed to win that 1v1 matchup, and he even builds the same items. Treads, or Phase on some occasions. You're going to get Mech ASAP and then build towards either an Aghanim Scepter or a BKB if you're forced to go for one, but ideally Aghanim Scepter is going to be the optimal build order, so Treads, Mech into the Aghanim Scepter. Your job is just to be a retard mech. To draw as much fire from the enemy team as possible, you just run at them, and they're forced to deal with you. So now we've got a Tinker pickup. So they decided to pick up Tinker now they've got the Tidehunter, because that gives them that assurance. And if you first pick Tinker, the enemy team can hard counter you by picking up a lot of very powerful mid lane heroes like the Brewmaster, who can do very well against the Tinker. And once he hits level 6, he can play aggressively and try to kill the Tinker. So we've got an immediate Skywrath ban coming up from ICLEN. They've tasted the Skywrath Mage Shadow Shaman combination before. They're not eager to go at it again, especially since Skywrath Mage works very well against the Tidehunter. If you're quick enough with your reflexes, you could actually silence Tide as he blinks into Ravage. So it's the line hex trick that a lot of pro players used to do in Dota 1, where when you're playing a hero with a hex like a line, you keep clicking the hex, clicking on the enemy hero when they're in range, and cancelling and clicking it over and over again, so that you don't move yourself out of position, and that way when they blink on top of you, you hex them before they get the Ravage off. And so it's a possible counter they could use. Skywrath Mage also works very well with the Shadow Shaman because he provides the setup. So you have Concussive Shot to enable Shadow Shaman to get the Shackle, and then you've got the Arcane Bolts coming in from the Skywrath Mage. As Shadow Shaman provides the lockdown, Skywrath Mage provides the damage. We've got an immediate Rubik ban coming from Plantronics. Bit surprising that they chose to ban out the Rubik, considering how effective Rubik is against the Tidehunter. Since if Tidehunter doesn't catch Rubik in the Ravage, every single time there's going to be a return Ravage flying out to him. And so it places a lot of pressure on the Tidehunter to be able to go for these perfect Ravages, or otherwise go for suboptimal Ravages to ensure they don't get stolen. And so we've got the Earthshaker ban also coming out, as Earthshaker is a very powerful setup hero, especially in conjunction with the Shadow Shaman. You've got a max amount of teamfight capability with the Echo Slam as well as with the Mass Serpent Wards. And Suck on D's in the last game I casted, he was able to completely dominate the pace of the game over on that Earthshaker. And so we've got a lot of support bans coming out from Plantronics as well as from ICLEN. When you pick up a Tinker, you have to ensure that you get a good support duo. Radiant side Tinker does enjoy significant advantages in the mid lane, since he's got easy access to the Ancients, but the most important aspect of Radiant Tinker over Dire Tinker is you've got a stronger safe lane, you've got a much more powerful off lane. And when you've got a very powerful off lane hero like the Tidehunter, if you guarantee him getting early Arcanes and early Blink, you can effectively win these fights early on, buy enough time for Tinker to be able to farm up his Boots of Travels in the Blink, and then once Tinker's got his core items online, it's very difficult to catch him out, and he's able to create space for the rest of your team, find his farm, and once the Dagon comes online, Shadow Shaman's going to be one dead puppy every single time. Laser missile into the Dagon, Shadow Shaman will drop, And when you're fighting a fight 4v5, especially if Shadow Shaman is not able to get his Mass Serpent wards off, you've in a very commanding lead, especially since you've got the Tidehunter Rev to set it up. The advantage of the Tidehunter, and the other reason why he's often banned, is he, unlike a lot of initiators, they don't provide you counter-initiation capability. Bat Rider, you always have to initiate. If you're reacting, if you try to catch them out with a lasso when they jump on you, you're not effectively performing that hero's role. Whereas with the Tidehunter, if they jump on Tinker, he can blink in and counter Ravage to catch out their initiation, and since they clump when they go into for the aggressive, you could catch out their entire team that way. So with the Viper ban coming from Plantronics, since they don't want to deal with Viper as a counter to the Razor, it's a bit of a 50-50 matchup. If Razor is unable to get a good link off, Viper can go play hyper aggressive against him and shut him down. So we've got the Witch Doctor as the first support pickup, and we've got the Drow Ranger Visage combo. This is an absolutely fantastic hero synergy because the Visage familiars, they've got 8 ticks of damage. They actually hurt like hell because they get 3 attacks in per second, but after those 8 attacks, their damage drops down to 10. Drow Ranger Marksman Aura, when you activate the passive, so it provides the ranged aura to creeps, not only do you have insane pushing capability by doubling the siege creeps damage, you also get insane damage from the familiars. And so there's a massive amount of pushing power coming in from Plantronics. Of course, the intrinsic weakness of picking up a Drow Ranger against the Tide is all you have to do is get in front of Drow Ranger, and she loses all her damage because she's got awful stat growth. And because she's actually very squishy early on, if Tide blink, all he has to do, he doesn't even have to have Ravage, as long as he's just right next to her to break the marksman. Drow Ranger becomes completely useless. If you do catch her in the Ravage, until she gets a BKB, Tinker can blow her up. So usually Drow Ranger, you want to go for BKB as soon as possible, similar to a Luna. Once you get that BKB, you can fight, because there's nothing they could do to touch you. Especially if the Ravage isn't able to catch, if the Tide can't catch you up with the Ravage, and whenever the enemy team drafts the Tide, you're forced to build BKBs on your core heroes. Otherwise, you want to build contingencies to the Tidehunter, such as, for instance, the Rubik, so you can return the Ravage back at them, or heroes like the Shadow Demon, whose sole job is to sit outside the disruption, come in, disrupt whatever priority target is caught in the disruption, and keep them alive. So you've got that defensive capability. But the Visage Drow Ranger combination works very well as a safe lane farmer, so most likely going to be seeing a mid-Razor. We've got a Morphling being picked up. And so how do you counter a Drow? You go for the Morphling. Morphling does very well against the Drow, because he's a much more powerful late game hero. They've got the two of the most powerful late game heroes in the game, the Tinker and the Morphling, and you've got potentially double shotguns. You've got the Morphling shotgun with the E-Blade Adaptive Strike, and then you've got Tinker with the E-Blade Dagon. Tinker actually might even opt to go for a Sheepstick this game to provide the extra control. The Morphling can be there to provide that damage. And the advantage of Morphling is very similar to the Tinker. He provides you the Alpha Strike advantage, where you're able to start a fight 4v5, but instantly killing your hero. So Morphling can instantly kill Shadow Shaman, or even instantly kill Drow if she doesn't have a BKB up, or if she's not able to BKB in time to block the majority of the E-Blade Adaptive Strike damage. And Visage as well, because he's only got 10% magic resistance and 0 armor, he's a very risky support hero because you have to be playing very aggressively. And the disadvantage of Plantronics MV's lineup is the Visage has to set up for the Shadow Shaman, unless the Shadow Shaman starts with boots. If Shadow Shaman starts with boots, both the supports are very low armor. You could turn on them quite easily. So they have to rely on having exceptionally good coordination and exceptionally good focus fire to bring down their targets, because if they're able to weather the initial storm, or if they have numbers parity, they can actually turn and go for a few return kills. Because Shadow Shaman and Visage, both very greedy supports, they need kills to be effective early on, just because you want Arcane Boots and Blink Dagger on Shadow Shaman ASAP, or at the very least you need Arcane Boots just so we can use all his abilities in the fight. And Visage, you ideally want him to go for an Aghanim Scepter as well. So you always want to be ahead of Visage. They ban out the Venomancers. Venomancer and Witch Doctor, absolutely phenomenal combination. Since you could either have the Venomancer Gale to set up for an easy cast Malediction, or Witch Doctor can cast to guarantee the Gale. So either way, you've got a good setup, either one can set up for the other, and you've got a massive amount of dot damage coming from the Malediction and the Poison Sting. So with a few right clicks, since Witch Doctor hits like an absolute monster truck, you can bring people down very easily. And it also gives you a huge amount of team fighting presence. Since ICLEN's lineup, they rely on these long drawn out engagements. I've got the Alpha Strike advantage with the Tinker and the Morphling, but at the same time, if the fight goes long with the March spam, with the Laser spam, and with the Venomancer Poison Nova, if that was available, they win these long drawn out engagements as well. Whereas Plantronics, they've got a lot of sustained DPS from the Drow and from the Razor, but Drow range is very squishy, so you can pop. They go for a surprise Storm Spirit pickup, and so ICLEN, they've been thrown a bit for a loop. Storm Spirit against Tinker, he's the natural counter, because Tinker, once the Blink Dagger comes online with the BOT, you're going to shift tab Blink, you're going to shift Q Blink into trees, and Storm Spirit, he can zip into you, and not only that, he's also completely invulnerable, so he doesn't give a damn about the march. With the Centaur Warrior Band coming out, so it looks like we are going to be seeing what looks like an Ag tri-lane with the Drow Ranger, Razor going to the top lane to fare up against the Tidehunter, and Storm Spirit going to be the mid lane. You can run Drow in the mid lane as a solo farmer, but she's not really too effective, especially against a hero like a Tinker, since all Tinker has to do is wait for her to go for a CS, laser her in the face, deny her a lot of farm, and then Drow Ranger starts to fall behind. Especially if if Carl decides to go for a split build where you go for 2 points of laser, 2 points of missile, you can actually kill the Drow Ranger or place a lot of pressure, and we're going to be seeing a support position Wraith King in conjunction with the Witch Doctor. And so ICLEN, they've got a very durable lineup. They've got the superior counter initiation capabilities, since Plantronics, their only form of initiation is going to be coming in from the Storm Spirit. And so, because they don't really have any kind of counter initiation, ICLEN have that advantage in team fights. And since the pressure is on Plantronics, their late game lineup does taper off compared to ICLEN just because their late game heroes are vastly superior. You've got Tinker as well as the Morphling. These are the two of the best late game heroes in the game. Tinker by far is the best late game hero just because he could drag the game out to 50-60 minutes if he's good with his positioning and able to spam out that march. Unless you catch Tinker outside of his base, it's damn nigh impossible to be able to breach high ground, especially if you don't have a hero like a Juggernaut, like a Nyx Assassin that could either sustain your push against March Missile or try to catch out the Tinker.
10 seconds remaining.
So we're just waiting for the players to select who they're going to be playing. So Honk looks like he's going to be the one position player, Mladja's going to be the mid lane Razor, and ESPX looks like we could actually be seeing perhaps a Drow Ranger going solo off lane up against the Tidehunter, and Storm Spirit can't be left alone against him. So it will be interesting to see how they decide to lane this. I'm going to introduce players from both teams. We've got a quick pause coming out from Top Xeno. We've got Mladja, who's usually their mid lane player, up on the Razor, so I believe it might be a mid lane Razor. Razor does do very well against the Tinker. Moop's going to be over in the Visage. Looks like he's going to be the 4 position. ESPX going to be what looks like a 1 position Storm Spirit, or at the very least a 2 position Storm, since Storm is a very independent hero. We've got Long Live Nada over on the Shadow Shaman. Honk going to be over in the Drow Ranger. So Drow Ranger is going to be the true 1 position. Over for ICLEN, Pengu going to be what looks like an offlane Tidehunter. Untamed is usually their offlane player, going to be the Morphling. Suckon D is going to be the 4 position Wraith King. Top Xeno going to be the 5 position Witch Doctor, and Carl going to be the 2 position Tinker. So ICLEN, they love to send Carl to the mid lane, so it's guaranteed that Carl will be the mid lane player. And Pengu looks like he's going to be the off lane, so we're going to be seeing a Morphling tri-lane coming out from ICLEN. Although that being said, Morphling also can go into the mid lane. He's a very effective mid lane farmer, since if you start with a Wraith Band and go for a few early points, if you go for an early point morph, you have enough base damage that you just bully them out of the lane. But with a Tinker on the field, especially a Radiant side Tinker, most likely going to be a mid lane Tinker. And Carl, yeah, he's being pulled 1 Tango, probably going to be starting with a few early stats. Morphling doing his thing. Usually see Agi morphed up to about 31 to 33 before you switch it, since you don't really need too much HP in the early stages of the game, especially at level 1, because the majority of damage is going to be coming in from right clicks. And when you have the Ring of Protection and the armor that you get from Morph, you're guaranteed to be able to survive, at least early on, since they won't be able to DPS your Morph. Mladja looks like he's going to the solo offlane. We are going to be seeing a mid lane Storm Spirit, so ESPX with that Marksman aura should be having a very easy time up against the Tinker. Mladja going to be left alone as the solo safe lane, and it looks like ICLEN actually clashing Ag Tri, so both NV and ICLEN inadvertently dodging their tri-lanes because they both wanted to play aggressive. We've got Moop leading the charge. He's got wards up on him, so no safety ward provided for Mladja since he's going to be a solo safe lane, doesn't really need it. He's immediately being pinged out. So it looks like Suckon D's was spotted him rotating. And Pengu going to be on that safe lane as that solo. Tidehunter in a solo safe lane enjoys a significant advantage because you're going to be forced to dive him because he's too durable to bring down otherwise. They do have the soul assumption, which is the saving grace for them. Looks like we've got a ward block coming out from Meepo. From Moops, we've got another ward being placed there to spot any rotations coming in, so this is a defensive ward being placed. And Radiant, very typical defensive safety ward placements that spots out all rotations coming in to the bottom lane and into the jungle.
The battle begins.
So a lot of emphasis is going to be placed on this mid lane matchup. Since Envy, they do have a huge amount of pushing capability once the Drow Ranger hits level 6, but Drow Ranger wants to get that BKB ASAP. You know, if Pengu is able to find his blink, before Drow Ranger can find her BKB, he can win these fights decisively. And so look, Pengu has to play impeccably and not afford to get picked off. Visage immediately getting pinged out as he thought about rotating mid, and Marksman at 1 is going to help out Drow Ranger get these last hits. So Honk leading the charge, going for body block. He let the range creep go up front, so that ensures that the creep equilibrium pushes towards your tower, so he'll be pushed back around here. So good recognition coming up from him. And Pengu most likely going to go for Anchor Smash at 1. There we go. Moops still hanging around the mid lane. They could look to go for a kill with that Grave Shield, but they don't have enough damage. And Tinker actually, Carl's holding onto his skill points. He's playing very passively. He's actually baiting out Moops. He knows he's there. He knows he's rotating in, especially if the ping's coming out, as they spotted out the neutral camp being pulled up. And so suck on these. They're getting ready to be able to rotate in case they need to, but he should be fine. They can't dive under the tower, especially a hero like a Visage with 0 armor and 10% magic resistance. And Carl, that being said though, the known threat of the Visage, even if he's not being successful as gank, has given ESPX a free wave of experience. So that looks like that was Move's intent. Now he's level 2.5. Carl's just hit level 2, so he's been opting for a point in laser. He's actually holding on to his skill points for now. You usually want to hold on to your skill points to adapt to the situation, just in case if you need to go for an early point over in the march if they decide to dive. You're on early point in laser. You're most likely going to be 2 points in laser and then max out the march. But Carl could offer a 2-2 build, and this is the old school Tinker build that gives you the highest amount of survivability, because it gives you a lot more versatility. So Pengu gets swallowed out with the shackle. Moops, unfortunately, he only has chill, so he doesn't have the soul assumption, but that might be enough. That he's with some great body blocks coming up from Moops. Pengu throws out the anchor smash, he's saying get the hell out of my way, but that could be taking a fall with a few more right clicks coming in. Pengu, he just skilled out the Kraken Shell. Kraken Shell poses off, and he just barely keeps himself alive. Moops takes a huge amount of damage from that. So it's the power of the Tidehunter that 1 point in Kraken Shell, and surely he was able to get out of that. So Tidehunter, in this case, probably going to be opting for 2 points in Kraken Shell. Looks like Mladja, he's actually getting a fair amount of farm, despite being in the solo safe lane. They can be playing a lot more aggressively. But Top Xeno and Cyclone D's, they have to wait till level 2 before they can really go for a kill attempt on Mladja. This Razor, very durable hero, despite having fairly poor stat growth, just because he's got good level 1 stats. He should be able to weather the initial salvo spells. And Maledict, the first point of Maledict is fairly weak when it comes to killing power. You need at least 2 points. ESPX, doing what Storm Spirit does best. Every single time the creep wave drops low, you drop a remnant to ensure the creep CS, and you throw a right click with the overload. So he's timing it properly to get those last hits. And Carl being forced back. Storm Spirit is a very powerful 1v1 laner, just because of the constant overload spam. He's most likely going to be going for a fairly standard build order, so 3 points in Vortex, and you want to max out the overload. Pengu does pick up a regen rune, so all the regen HP he lost immediately comes back in. Suck on these, rotating mid. Storm Spirit, like a Tinker, you want to gank him before level 6, because he's very vulnerable in lane. He's a slow hero, he's a slow fat man, even if he is very jolly. So he's doing a lot of overload harass over in Carl. Suck on these comes, initiates with the Wraith Fire Blast. We've got the laser coming online. Unfortunately, it's only 1 point. He opted for a point in missile. Carl doesn't believe in 2 points of laser. They immediately turn around, so wasting a huge amount of time on Suck on these. And while that's happening, Mladja, left in top lane's actually got a lot of farm compared to Pengu. So even though the Radiant offlane is a lot stronger than the Dire offlane, because Pengu's over in the safe lane, he's been deprived a fair amount of gold, especially with the creep equilibrium control coming up from Honk. So good recognition coming up from him by leading the charge with that range creep to ensure that it would die first. Looks like we're going to be seeing a very early magic wand as well as what looks like a ring of Aquila coming up on him. So magic stick makes a lot of sense up against Tidehunter, since he's always going to be throwing out that anchor smash to find CS. That's his only CS mechanic, so he can't really rely on his base damage. ESPX, very low, looks like Bottle is flying out to him. Suck on these, he's in there with the clarity, choose to dive this if Carl is nearby, but Carl snacking up the Radiant side Ancients. They're doing what Tinker does best. Looks like he did go for 2 points in missile, so going for a bit of a hybrid build to give himself a lot more laning presence, because you need at least a few points in missile to be able to contest the Storm Spirit in lane. Looks like it is a bottom room, and it's being pinged out. Nada's going to go ping it out, looking to bodyguard it, but I don't think he needs to. ESPX, yeah, there we go, he's going to bolt charge up, so he's got a massive amount of lane control. And Carl, because he's been shut down so heavily in this mid lane, he's going to be very careful, because once level 6 comes online, Storm Spirit can play very aggressively against him, ESPX, especially since he's opted for 3 points in the Vortex. And so the rationale behind 3 points in the Vortex is it guarantees the Remnant Pop. And so it's the most cost-efficient build in regard to mana, because you have to optimize your mana pool. Mladja, eat the Wraith Fire Blast from Cyclone D's. Morphling that comes in with the waveform. Cast Flies as well, they should have enough damage to bring him down, unless they don't have boots up on Cyclone D's. No, never mind, he's got that second Wraith Fire Blast, so yeah, they are able to bring him down. Untamed draws First Blood. And the Morphling probably going to be going for an early Lincoln Sphere. He could decide to go more Midas into the E-Blade, but while I say that, Pengu turned into a chicken, then caught up with the Grave Chill. He wants to get that Anchor Smash on 2. The Soul Assumption flies. Unfortunately, he should be taking it forward. Ether Shock's there, so Nada's able to clean him up. So they trade offlane for offlaner. But because they got First Blood, they're more than happy to take that. But Drow Ranger Honk hasn't really been shut down at all, opting for an early point into the Gust to provide that repositioning ability in case they decide to play aggro up on him. And Tidehunter, while he is a very powerful offlane hero, you want to get Blink Dagger ASAP. If Tide isn't able to get a timely Blink, he really does take her off. Mladja, called out, Suck on these comes in, catching off the Wraith Fire Blast as well, and Untamed, he just stands his ground, got stealth and the waveform. There should be another kill going into his hands. Looks like Top Xeno, jelly of his gains, takes the last hit. That's the second kill over Mladja, and so he died, came back to life, TP'd in and died again, so it's going to delay his experience as a farm by a huge amount. Looks like Razor actually opted to not go for any points of static link, since he knows that he's not going to be able to get a link off against 3 heroes. If he tries to link one, he'll be dead by then. So he wants to go for a lot more survivability, and having the second or third point in the unstable current ASAP gives you a lot more survivability, especially against the Wraith King, since the 1.5 second purge at level 3 is actually going to delay him by a significant amount. You could actually wait out the majority of the Wraith Fire Blast. Carl finally finds his first rune. Pengu, level 5, looks like he's maxing out the Anchor Smash. So if you're playing a 1v1 off lane, at level 5 you could, or at level 4, you could usually opt for a point in Gush to play a lot more aggressively. Carl, he's got to be careful as Moops, even though they know Moops is there, since he didn't smoke to rotate in, there's that unknown threat. And Zycondes comes in, they can actually rotate in on Moops. He's caught between a Wraith King and a Tinker, so the only King that matters. They zip in with the Lightning Zip, and ESPX should be able to bring down Carl in time. The Soul Assumption flies in there with enough damage. Zycondes should get the retaliatory kill. With that Wraith Fire Blast in the march, those tiny little robots, they don't contain candy, they only contain damage. And so they're able to trade, but that's a trade that Envy are more than happy to take. As Carl, he's having a very difficult start, especially since Drow Ranger, the advantage of the Drow is she power spikes at level 6, so she comes online very early. Having a Drow Ranger level 6, level 7 means you can start knocking down towers. There's very little they could do to defend this, especially since Tinker's been shut down so heavily. He has stacked out the Ancients though, so they haven't looked to contest his Ancients yet. So they're looking to dominate in lane. They could look to place a ward up here to spot out when he's when he's going for Ancients, and then try to kill him when he takes Ancients. So that could be another thing they're looking to do, in which case you turn the momentum of the enemy against you, since that you're then able to farm up Tinker stacks, and that makes it very difficult for him to be able to recover. So ESPX, very low. If he eats a laser as well as a missile, it would be enough to finish him off. But he's playing very far forward, waiting for the bottle to come get delivered to him. The advantage of Tinker in the mid lane is when you go for that March build, if you're against a melee hero or short range hero like a Storm Spirit, every time that March flies, you can't go near the creep wave. And Tinker is able to zone you out that way, although you usually don't want to use March to control creep equilibrium unless you want to go for Rune, because it pushes the wave out, and it's an unreliable form of finding CS. Untamed, looks like he's doing very well against Blanche. Looks like Moops has rotated in to the top lane to provide some assistance. So he's got that 2 points up on the Soul Assumption. Unfortunately, he doesn't have enough damage with just Meladja and himself to be able to get that full charge off in a timely fashion. Untamed looks like he picked up a Hand of Midas, so most likely going to be going for an E-Blade Rush then. Lincoln Sphere is a farming item, so you never want to go Midas into Lincoln Sphere. That's a double farming item that really delays you. Looks like the Ancients, they're sick of the ward up on them, so they actually deny it. Carl duking it up with Moops, with that double damage rune, Moops takes a huge amount of damage with that one right click. And Carl, he's picking it out. They're both sides, they know there's a sentry ward there, they know that he's going for Ancients, and they have to try to interrupt the Ancients. ESPX, unfortunately, looks like he went to the bottom room. Moops could actually be taken far right now. Laser as well as missile will be enough for you to bring him down, especially with that one more right click. There we go, doesn't even need the laser. And Moops, overextending, especially against a double damage Tinker, he does hit very hard. And in fact, every hero hits hard with a double damage rune. And with the missile, he's guaranteed to get that pick-off power. So Nada comes in, catches up Pengu with a shackle, and Ravage flies! Defensive Ravage being used by Pengu, so that's a 150 second window he just gave Team Envy. So that means that when the Drow Ranger hits level 6, they can knock down the tier 1, and they don't have anything to be able to delay or defend that safe lane tower. And unlike the Dire offlane tower, this tower is these towers are the lowest priority towers in the game, because they don't give you too much map control, more so for the Dire side, because it gives you another entry point into Ancients, and I suppose for the Radiant side as well. But the safe lane tower, on the other hand, is a completely different story. Once you lose that safe lane tower, you lose a lot of map control. It's a great way to be able to starve them out of the farm. Well, that happens. Meladja taking a fair amount of damage, but it looks like Waveform was used to initiate into that, as opposed to finish them off. And Suck on these wasn't there to get a follow-up. So Wraith King most likely going to be going for treads into the Blink Dagger. Carl caught up with the zip. ESPX caught immediately rotating in. Carl tries going for the laser, but ESPX immediately goes on top of him to prevent that, and moves is able to clean him up the Soul Assumption. So it's the execution power coming out with the Storm. He's now got that maxed out overload, so Storm Spirit hurts like hell. Looks like he's been going towards the Orchid of Malevolence. It's a fairly simple build order for him. Pengu, level 7.5, so he's got more. He's actually getting out leveled by Meladja, despite Meladja's 2 deaths, and looks like he actually gets a return kill over in the top lane. So with no points up and static link, no mercy being shown, able to clean that kill using the plasma field. And Untamed, Agi morphing to make good use of the Voodoo Restoration. Usually when they keep Voodoo Restoration on 1, he takes a huge amount of damage from that. And Meladja actually might be going to go for a kill over a top Xeno if he decides to really commit to that, but the cast bounces is there. Having that maxed out Unstable Current, I mean, it's really good recognition coming up from Meladja, since top Xeno and Suck on these, if they choose to initiate on him, the 2-second purge being applied to both of them will buy Meladja enough time to back himself out of there. This is the only reason why Razor works as that safe lane solo when he's outnumbered, was the Unstable Current. And now you've got the Visage Familiars. So Carl, they're just camping in the top lane, they're doing in the mid lane, they're doing everything they can to shut down Carl and prevent him from getting that early boost to travel, since when ESPX rotates mid, he's going to zip on in, the Familiars come as well. Bird drop lands over on Suck on D, so he takes a fair amount of damage from that, but that's on cooldown, so they know the Visage Familiars are there, and even if the drop isn't available, the damage that comes out from them, especially with the Vortex from the ESPX, should be enough. And now that Honk's at level 6, he knocks down your first tower. So this is the power of the Drow Ranger. Could actually be opting for Mask of Madness very early on. It's like a, yeah, it looks like we had to be seeing a Mask of Madness. So like a sniper, Drow Ranger at level 7, if he's able to get a very early Mask of Madness, no one can do anything to her. She will pop it and machine gun you down. She's got so much damage coming in from the marksman, as well as from her ultimate, that she just runs you down. It's very difficult to deal with. Gust being used on Penguin to prevent him from being a Ravage, as Ravage just came off cooldown. Shackle's being used, supports are rotating in. Looks like Nada, he's gonna be a sacrificial lamb. As Honk says, sorry buddy, I can't do nothing. It looks like Medallion of Courage is now up for moves. And ESPX with the Familiars, I'm gonna start split pushing over in the mid lane. The Marksman Aura can be used right now, looks like it was on cooldown, so Precision Aura was used prior. Looks like Carl finally has picked up his Boost of Travels. Bird Drop immediately lands, and ESPX could choose to commit to that, but he doesn't want to, since he knows the support potentially could be rotating in. Top Xeno looks like he actually opted for an early point in stats over the Restoration. Since Restoration, you want it, it's not really effective until you hit level 3, level 4. And especially since you don't necessarily have a massive amount of burst damage, you're better off going for the casting over the Voodoo Restoration. Honk playing very aggressively against Penguin. Unfortunately, Penguin is just barely able to make on out there. And Honk is now out of position. He's using that Mask of Madness, so popping Mom's Spaghetti to get the hell out of dodge. Smoke rotation coming up from Top Xeno, as well as Suck on D's. Honk is actually called out of position now. Casting the Flies is set up, as well as the Death Wall. Unfortunately, Death Wall doesn't provide flying fish, so he's juking him out. But at least force him to go high as Suck on D's comes in. So good play coming up from Top Xeno and Suck on D's. Death Wall to be able to keep him in there, and Suck on D's comes in to flush him out. So stuck between the Death Wall and the Wraith King barreling down at you, you're dead either way. So no TP scroll. Oh, looks like he didn't actually TP out. He could have actually chosen to TP out a lot earlier, but decided not to do so. So Mask of Madness has been revealed, and Drow Ranger takes her first death. So in terms of net worth, ESPX, lead with the scoreboards. Looks like Shadow Shaman got that creep kill as well. He's almost got his Orchid of Malevolence. He'll be having that up in about another 3 minutes at the rate that he's farming. Shadow Shaman will be finding his Arcane Boots fairly soon. And Mladja doing a lot of work over in that top lane. Since with that maxed out unstable card, it's difficult for them to be able to go with him. Especially since both their supports have only got single target abilities. And Mladja, he's going to be the mech carry for his team. Looks like he actually dropped his Ring of Aquila temporarily. Not too sure what the rationale behind that was. Suck on These goes in, tries to go in over an ESPX, but ESPX immediately zips to get a disjointed. The cast move should be taken full from the tower right click. Especially with Suck on These leading the chase, but he immediately TP's back on. And ESPX is bubble charging so he can zip on out of there. Since he's actually almost out of mana. He's got enough for one zip, and now he's completely dry. And so if he gets caught out with the stun, he's going to have to save it. Suck on These using this, so they're baiting each other out to try to go in for that zip. Unfortunately, he's caught out now. Ravage committed as well. They really want to bring down the Storm Spirit. ESPX finally takes a fall, and Plantronics as well. Nada caught between the Morphling waveform and gets torn apart. So it looks like Morphling is going to be going for the Lincoln Sphere. And so the reason why it's not the greatest idea is it's too much greed. Since Lincoln Sphere on the Morphling, it's not a fighting item. Unlike on the Weaver, when you find Lincoln Sphere on the Weaver, you say, okay, we can fight now, because I can run in, and they can't really do much to control me, especially with the Sakuchi and the Time-Lapse. On Morphling, it's more of a farming item. The reason why you go for Lincoln Sphere, even if they've got no real valuable single target spells, is because it gives you very efficient stats, first of all. It gives you the mana regen and the HP regen, so you can afford to spam out your waveform. You're always going to have mana to be able to morph out, and so it's a very powerful farming and defensive item. You can use it aggressively, since it lets you play a lot more ballsy. But ideally, if you go for Midas and for Lincoln Sphere, you're not going to be that effective until you're able to farm up another item on top of that. So it's probably going to be Midas into Lincoln Sphere, and then into the E-Blade. Or it could even just be a casual Perseverance, and then go right towards the E-Blade. Since in this game, there's not too many important single target abilities, because there's so many ways to break it. You've got the Ether Shot coming up from Nada. You need to break the Lincoln so show the Vortex Flies. You've got the Great Shield and the Soul Assumption as well. And so there's no critical ability like a Doom or like a Bane or like a Fiend's Grip coming up from Bane. And they are able to clean up Rorschach. Very surprised ESPX took that compared to Honk, but I suppose the advantage of the Storm Spirit is he's one of the most efficient Aegis carriers. So long as you expend all your mana before you die, and before the Aegis pops, once you come back to life with full HP and full mana, you can then convert all that mana to damage. Storm Spirit, only sticking with 3 points in the Vortex. You usually stick with 3 until you maxed out your Remnant as well. So you don't want to max out Remnant because it costs too much mana, so it's actually very inefficient for mana for DPS. And you don't want to max out Vortex because you only need 3 points to set up for the Remnant. In some cases, you can choose to max out the Overload if you want to have an easier time laning. Well, that cripples your killing capability, and it forces you to have to zip directly on top of them. So the level 1 Remnant's enough to be able to proc that Remnant, since otherwise it's not going to be as reliable. So the most efficient Storm Spirit build is to go for the 3 points of Vortex to guarantee the Remnant proc. Whatever range moves, gets caught out with a Ray Fire Blast coming up from Suck on These. Death Wall being dropped by Top Xeno, showing no mercy. Gust Flies, they are able to bring him down. Tinker comes in, and Top Xeno should be taking a fall. ESPX goes ham with the Overload. He's actually standing his ground. Missile Flies as well, and ESPX is actually out of mana. He's not going to have enough mana to be chasing on him. Reincarnate pops from Suck on These, catches out Nada with that Ray Fire Blast, and Nada should be taking a fall. Untamed says your final solution and cuts him down. So Hitler Water really doing a lot of work. And ESPX, he's completely out of money. He's got the Aegis, but a massive team fight going in favor of ICLEN. And because they've got the superior late game lineup, NV, they're dependent on being able to win that mid game and be able to death ball the way that they play. So they've got the mech now available, so they do have that going for them. As Pengu, he wants to go for Blink Dagger before he goes for mech. Untamed taking a fair amount of damage, so they don't have any follow-up. Ladger pops the Eye of the Storm before he gets Wraithfire stun. And that Wraithfire stun, since there's the unstable current, Suck on these gets purged for 2 seconds. Carl now comes in though, so they might have enough damage to bring down, especially with the laser missile. Looks like he's rearming to be the guaranteed missile proc, but Untamed just going ham smacking him. Suck on these, throws out cheeky right click. So they are able to clean them up. So ICLEN getting a bit cocky though, since they can't afford to throw away these fights like this. Their lineup is centered around grouping up as 5 and winning the mid game. But it's difficult to do that when you're against the Tide as well as the Tinker. Especially since Tinker, he had a difficult start, but they weren't, because they had to shift targets and start pressuring the top lane, because they had to place a lot of pressure on Pengu as well. It's very difficult for them to be able to identify who they should go on. If you try to shut down the Morphling, then Tinker and the Tide will be able to find farm and create space. If you shut down the Tide, then the Tinker and the Morphling create space, and so on. So it's the advantage of the tri-core lineup, especially 2 very greedy cores, because it's difficult to identify which one to shut down. Ideally, you want to shut down Tinker and take his towers. If you're able to take his tier 2s early on before the Blink Dagger comes online, it becomes difficult. But now Carl has picked up his BOT Blink, so he's reached the point of critical mass where he's got the items he needs to be able to keep himself alive. But ESPX, he's the natural counter to him. And so his sole job is to be able to try to pick off Tinker outside the base, so they could go for high ground. Pengu, he's being pinged out. ESPX, he could choose to commit it. He doesn't have enough mana for the Ravage, so they decide not to go for it. And Suck on these, he's just going to be saving gold until we can find that Blink Dagger. Since Blink on Wraith King is absolutely essential to ensure that you could get a timely Wraithfire Blast off, especially since Storm Spirit can easily disjoint or prevent it from even casting the Wraithfire Blast on them just because it has such a slow projectile speed. And it's very obvious that Wraith King's going to be stunning here. He has one ability. Top Xeno called out. The Suck on these are there, and ESPX zips on top of him. Takes that last hit. Pops that haste on, and Suck on these immediately TPs back home. He doesn't want to stick around there. Carl, looks like he really rotate in, throws out the missile. There's a fair amount of damage now, so this is why it's so difficult to breach high ground against a Tinker. He just throws out the missile. Does a lot of work against you. Ledger in the top lane doing some slow push in front. He's probably going to be going for the Aghanim Scepter ASAP so they can try to slow siege high ground and send him up front. Since they want to bait out a Ravage, an unsuccessful Ravage, over from ICLEN. So if they only catch out Razor and say another hero and they're not able to bring him down in time, it's going to be very difficult. So Razor goes up front, Drow Ranger hangs in the back. So Razor's there to run up at you, force you to deal with him. ESPX running for that march like it was candy. Goes in on Carl. Suck on these, immediately stuns him and wasn't able to use that Orchid. And he actually takes a fall. He wastes the Aegis. Mass Serpent Ward's also been committed. Huge misplays coming up from Envy. Top Xeno and the Suck on these are now there. Wraithfire Blast is going to be available. Cast does land as well as the Ravage. Death Ward being used. They're making sure Storm Spirit died. The Aegis is completely wasted. Mass Serpent Ward, they're doing a lot of work up from Suck on these. He doesn't have Reincarnate, but he's just going ham. He might actually be taking falls from Ledger, so that would bring him down. The Wraithfire dot should be enough to be the kill Shadow Shaman, so there we go. Now takes a fall. Pengu gets cleaned up by the Soul Assumption, and Top Xeno, he's backing off. He's actually got nothing. And Untamed, he's hunting for him. Catches up Ledger. Laser flies whilst the missile. Adaptive Strike being used, predominantly for the stun time more than the damage. It's only 1 point. Waveform being used on top of him. You get right clicks and you can right click while you're waveforming now. And Tinker's finally able to clean them up. So Envy, there's lineups on to run out of a lot of momentum and a lot of steam, especially since they're so centered around the mid game. Drow Ranger, when it comes to late game, can't do anything against the Tinker and against the Morphling. And looks like Drow Ranger opted for a very early Blink Dagger. Blink Dagger is a fantastic item on the Drow. Since similar to the Clinks, you don't have to build, you don't need to build damage on Drow. You get all the damage from your abilities. You don't necessarily need to build utility on Drow, unlike a Clinks, because you've got that silence. And so what you need to build then is you need to build some kind of way to be able to reliably engage and disengage to maintain your time on target. Since Drow Ranger is a very slow hero, you need to get that first hit in with that Frost Arrow in order to be able to stay on top of them. And so the Blink Dagger gives you that functionality. Especially, it works very well against the Tide as well. And so if you're quick enough with your fingers, when he blinks on top of you, you can blink out and use that. If you get bait out and disjoint the majority of the Ravage, you can start a fight in a very good position. So it looks like with a quick pause coming out. So hopefully it shouldn't be anything too big. I mean, quickly taking a look at the golden experience graph. Well, we are paused. 5,000 experience lead in favor of ICLEN, which is absolutely critical because the pressure, the onus is on NV to be able to break high ground in 35 minutes. Because that's when the lineup starts to taper off. Razor is a very powerful late game carry if he gets obscenely farmed. And Ledger, because he's been the solo safe lane, he has been doing very well, all things considered. But he's not going to be reaching enough farm to be able to go toe-to-toe against the Tinker and against the Morphling. In terms of gold, 2,000 gold lead in favor of NV because I have been taking these towers, but the EXP lead is going to be the critical factor. Especially since, although the advantage they do have going for them is that ICLEN, they don't have a mech carrier. Tidehunter is probably going to be the mech carrier, but he's not going to be farming it for a while. And the Morphling and the Tinker have gone for Ultra Greed. So Tinker looks like he's going for Dagon, so he's just going to be there to provide damage. Does make a lot of sense, as the Visage and the Shadow Shaman can kill them at the start of a fight. So it makes your rearms a lot more efficient. Since otherwise you want to go for a Sheepstick, but of course the drawback of the Sheepstick is it's got a very ungainly build time. Since you need to farm up about 5,600 gold before it becomes effective. Stuck on D's, Reincarnate is available, gets called out with a Visage Familiar drop. It should be dropping as well. They're not even needed to drop. There we go. One drops, Reincarnate's forced. Moops comes in, throws out the Soul Assumption. He's going to be a Sacrificial Lamb, eats a Missiles whilst in waveform. In a very difficult place, they are able to bait out that Reincarnate and waste it. And very unfortunate, it looks like he just hit level 11 from that kill. So if Wraith King had level 2 Reincarnate, that'd be a very worthwhile trade. It's only 160 second cooldown, but unfortunately, since he got that level from that kill, and just skilled up Reincarnate at level 11, 260 second cooldown. That's why when you're playing a 4th position Wraith King, when you hit level 6, you usually want to hold on to your skill point and not skill Reincarnate immediately. Because otherwise, if you skill Reincarnate immediately, and you're able to get an unsuccessful Reincarnate, so you get caught in a position, your teammate, you die, your teammates aren't there to be able to capitalize, you lose a 5-minute window. And so, since you can skill your abilities even when you're stunned or silenced or turned into a pig, you usually want to hold on to your skill point so that when you're in a good position, you say, okay, my team is there to back me up, I don't care if I die, I could go ham. Then you skill your Reincarnate then, so it gives you a lot more control, because you can't afford to waste a level 1 Reincarnate. Especially with how long the cooldown is. The whole point of a 4th position Wraith King is to be the control, is to have that Reincarnate. Because otherwise you might as well draft another support hero with a stun, you'd be a lot more effective. So Visage Familiar drop, but he ate that much. So you're taking a fair amount of damage. Untamed might actually be able to clean up, especially with the March flying through. So only one bird flying around, doing a lot of reconnaissance. So that's the advantage of the Visage against the Tinker. Eats the Anchor Smash. Looks like Anchor Smash actually does pure damage over on the Familiar, so with that rework to the Ancients. Lincoln Sphere is now available for Untamed. So the advantage of the Lincoln Sphere, of course, is like on the Weaver, because you've got so many ways to be able to keep yourself alive, it makes it very difficult to be able to go for a kill on the Morphling. And since you have the late game assured, you might as well build for the late game, because with the Tinker, chances are the game is going to be going late. Unless if NV are able to find a very successful team fight, catch Tinker with kill him outside the base, and then catch him without buyback. It's the issue with Tinker, it's the reason why a lot of teams choose to ban him out, as opposed to playing with him, is even if the Tinker player is absolutely awful, he's still able to provide so much pressure on the enemy team. ESPX, EC Adapter as well, so Ray Fire Blast, he's able to disjoint that. He's disjointing like crazy using that lip, but Pengu just spits on him. So the Gypsy Fish and the Tidehunter jumps on him, hits him with the yank, and spits in his face and brings him down. Carl immediately blinks to the tree for an aggressive march, to clear out that creep wave, to creating space to prevent them from coming from this angle. So good recognition coming up from Carl. And it's something that a lot of high-level Tinker players like to do. When you're pushing, as opposed to simply whacking the tower or throwing a march from where you are, blink ahead of the creep wave, so you create your team a lot more space for your team. Mass Circle Ward's being used, but they're going to be wasted. They're going to be farmed up. There's about 200 gold just fed towards the enemy team. Carl, Ghost Scepter now available, so he's going for the Excalibur build. Dagon level 1, then going towards the E-Blade, gives you the much more efficient DPS for your gold. Also, looks like he's only going for 1 point in rearm, so he is going for the Excalibur build. It gives you a lot more efficiency. Ladger going ham over on Carl. Should be able to bring him down, especially with the Soul Assumption flying. One more right click needed. Doesn't even need it, since you can always choose to commit with the Art of Storm or with the Plasma Field and Moops. Untamed should be the snack. And now, never mind, the mech is there. Keep him just barely alive. Forced to replicate out, so Morphling's safe. It looks like Moops is going to make it out there as well. It's a great disengage coming up from MV. Pengu takes out his frustration over the familiars. Somebody should call the SPCA, because you're feeding... that's cruelty to animals right there. You should have at least tried to resummon them. But Moops, unfortunately, that was on cooldown. So no familiars. It's a 2-minute window for him. Looks like he's going to be the mech carrier. And he's actually got just about enough gold to be able to finish it. And so in terms of map control, notice that the only Observer Ward that the Radiant side have is placed there. This is a very defensive ward. They've actually got one placed here as well to provide some high ground vision. So when you lose your tier 1, you usually want to place a ward either here or there, depending on what side you're on, to be able to provide you that extra buffer of vision, to make it very difficult for people to rotate in from the side. With a defensive Radiant ward here to be able to help spot in any approach coming into the Ancients. So the Ancients is going to be the guaranteed comeback mechanic. And Pengu going right for a Refresher Rock. Pulled out the Gust as well as the Lightning Zip coming up for ESPX. Should be able to bring him down. And ESPX has had some really good plays, also had some questionable plays where he panicked and wasted a huge amount of his mana zipping like crazy there. Pengu simply waited until he was out of mana and then blinked on top of his Gush in his face. If he'd just done one long zip back home, probably would have kept himself alive. And every time you zip, you lose a percentage of your mana pool. And Honk pops that Mask of Madness, goes Hong Kong, starts smacking the tower. Looks like Ledger actually took out Tinker in the bot lane. So Razor doing a huge amount of work. He's actually got his items set to completed now. And that Precision Aura, that's only level 1 so far, level 2 now, so once that Precision Aura gets maxed out, because they have the entire team is ranged, they get a lot of benefit from that. Because Visage, he actually hits surprisingly hard, because with that Great Shield, 64% attack speed, he's actually able to deal a fair amount of deeps, especially with the Familiars there to capitalize as well. So the Precision Aura and the Medallion does a huge amount of work. They should be able to take the tier 2 in the mid lane, and even in the off lane as well. We've got rotation now coming in from Penguin. Ledger, he's saying, fuck it, I'm gonna go for this. If you kill me, so long as I'm able to get the tower, it's gonna be worthwhile. And he might actually, he's going to TP himself on home. He knows there's no Ravage available. If he at least baits out the Ravage, he should be fine. Ledger, what a player. He'll take that tier 2 like a boss. He TP'd out to see if Pengu had Ravage off cooldown, he'd be forced to expend to go for a kill, in which case it guarantees the Roshan. So great recognition coming up from him. A lot of players have backed off immediately, or tried to stand their ground and died. But Ledger really capitalizing on the CD abilities of the enemy team and creating space. So they're able to get that Roshan. BKB is now up on Honk, and Honk has reached the point of critical mass with Blink, Mask Man, and BKB. He's ready to fight. They catch up Pengu. Pengu, unfortunately, doesn't have Ravage yet. Got up in 2 seconds. These immediately blinks on top of him. Turns into a chicken now. What Ravage coming up cooldown for Pengu? He's caught out with the Orchid to prevent him from being a re-engage. And ESPX is actually almost out of mana. He's got enough mana for 1 zip. Ravage kills him immediately. Nada as well takes a fall. Untamed shotguns him in the face. So shotgun shells is bad for your health. Moves gets cleaned up by the Death Wards. The Dagon immediately pops him. And Ledger runs back in. He shows up late to the party. Didn't quite get the memo. No Mass Servant Wards. They might be able to bring down stuck on these as ESPX actually cleans it up. So they get 2. Untamed as well, taking a lot of damage. He's got the waveform available. He's able to get a great long range waveform out now there. So able to disengage quite successfully. So in NV, they actually break dead even with that because they lost Aegis and they used up a vast majority of their ultimates to ensure that. Looks like the 10-second BKB charge wasn't even used. A Drow Ranger, that was without the BKB. If they had that BKB, it could have been a completely different fight. But the great Ravage coming up from Pengu burns off the Aegis of ESPX and captures up the Drow Ranger, so they're able to bring it down. And looks like Tinker, 2,300 gold before he gets that E-Blade. And Morphling as well, looks like he actually picked up Yasha, so Morphling might not even be going for that shotgun build, instead going for more of a right-click Morph build. But the drawback to that is Morphling's biggest strength is if you go for the E-Blade build, you're guaranteed to start a fight 4v5, and if they decide to jump on you, since you can morph while you're stunned, they're not going to be able to kill you anyway. So it's a very cost-efficient item on the Morphling, because it gives you a lot of stats for its gold, and it gives you a massive increase in your killing power, especially when you also have a lot of magic damage coming out. So you can... you're guaranteed to be able to pick off their backline heroes from the very beginning. Tinker goes into Shadow Shaman, Morph goes into Visage, and if Pengu's able to catch them out in the Ravage, they're dead. So you start a fight without the backline, the enemy team's forced to break and disengage, so ESPX is going to zip on down there. But with the Blink Tag available from Wraith King, Suck on these can immediately re-engage. And so ICLEN, they're putting themselves in a very good position. EXP is completely even now, actually starting to go in favor of NV, and gold leads heavily in NV's favor, so 7,500 gold lead. But of course, we're reaching the point, we're going to reach the point in about 7 minutes where NV's lineup starts to plateau. Since the Razor, even though he's got a lot of farm, looks like he's going for a Refresher Orb, you usually have about a 35-minute window to try to breach high ground against the Tinker. Because once you're past that 35-minute mark, that's when Tinker and Tinker's team are strong enough that it's very difficult to breach it unless you catch him outside that base. And so we could actually be seeing some high ground wards being placed there. In Dota 2, unlike Dota 1, you actually can place wards off the map, and that provides flying vision. So this is something that a lot of teams like to do. In the KDL, I believe it was as Zephyr, they actually placed a ward here to provide flying vision so that when MP, who is playing as the Tinker with BOT in, they'd be able to see him rotate in and immediately blink on top of it and go for a kill. They actually even drafted Nature's Prophet and the Lifestealer, so they had that global infestation bomb just to kill the Tinker. Of course, MP did... looks like Zephyrface actually did lose that game up against Zephyr actually did lose that game against Pokerface simply because the game was dragged out to the 60-minute mark, and Tinker reached the point where he could go 1v5 against their entire team, so long as the rest of his team were able to create space for him. The Earthshake and the Eldtime did a huge amount of work. So we've got another pause coming out. Just going to take a quick look at inventories while we are paused. So Carl, going to be going towards the E-Blade. Has been shut down fairly significantly by the amount of deaths he's taken, especially since he also has to hold on to buyback. Suck on these, he's picked up the Blink Dagger, so probably going to be going for a Blade Mail, especially with the uncontrolled AoE coming out from Envy. Top Xeno, he's going to be going towards the Aghanim Scepter of his own, so the Skrillex Death Ward, that 900 bounce range. Pengu going to be going for a Refresher Orb. Looks like Mech still isn't up for Moops. He actually had the mana to the gold to finish it. Looks like, actually, never mind, it's a bit of a panic buy since Mladger already has Mech. I've just realized this, so it's just a value buckler. Since bucklers, stacking bucklers actually is a fairly effective thing with the mech because the armor aura stacks, and Visage can always use a bit more armor, so it looks like he's going for a Pipe of Insight instead. Would have preferred maybe the Aghanim Scepter over the Pipe, but that being said, still not a bad pickup on him. They are grouping up in force. Mladger pops the level 3 Eye of the Storm with the Aghanim Scepter. So that's 3 jolts per second. You can't man-fight against the Razor with the Eye of the Storm up, especially once the Aghanim Scepter comes online. Because if it's only hitting one target, you're losing 3 armor a second. You can't man-fight them, just because, not even including the damage coming up from the Eye of the Storm, the negative 3 armor per second alone is enough reason not to man-fight the Razor, especially since he could get the leash off. So the reason why Razor is such a powerful hero is he just shuts down their carry. You run him not so much as a carry, more as an anti-carry. It looks like they actually clean up Untamed over the bottom lane, so they force it a buyback over Morphling. It's a huge spree, massive Ravage coming up from Pengu. They do catch out one, so Nada takes a fall. ESPX zips on Nada, Moops gets cleaned up. Waveform's flying, they do have the Adapter Strike, and ESPX, they're going to be caught out of position once again, does take a fall. Suckling is body blocking him just in case. And the plays coming out from Pengu, the little penguin they could, catches out 4 of their team with that Ravage, sets up the fight. Gosh now flies over on Honk. Honk wasn't there, he's able to blink himself on out back home. They're able to clean up the Storm Spirit. So while Storm Spirit does kind of tinker in the sense that you could go for these aggressive pickoffs, because the Morphling is there, if Storm Spirit zips in, since he's the only form of initiation, NV in a disadvantage when it comes to these team fights, because they've got the counter initiation coming in from Tengu, and they've got the initiation coming in the form of Suckling D. And so NV, because they lack the ability to be able to go in and start these fights, since the Drow Ranger sure as hell doesn't want to blink on the enemy team, even if she gets a great gust off, just because she puts herself at risk, she wants to go in when the Storm Spirit goes in as well. So that while NV have a lot of pick-off power, and in terms of 5-on-5 team fights, because they lack that ability to be able to initiate and start a fight on on favorable terms for them, it's very difficult for them to be able to try to win these fights, or win them very cleanly, since ICLEN, even if they do lose a fight, they're always trading. And they're more than happy to trade, since the longer the game goes, the higher their chances of success are, especially with the Tinker and the Morphling. So Morphling could just be another farming item to value Yasha, since Yasha also can be considered a farming item. It's a very cost-efficient item, and on edgy carries, usually is a fairly good item in general, especially on a hero like a Morphling, since he is very slow. It gives him a lot of cheap stats to pump up his Adapter Strike, but ideally you want to be going for that E-Blade, even if you already have another E-Blade carry, just because it's a very cost-efficient item for Morphling, and it gives you that Alpha Strike advantage of being able to start a fight 4v5. And if the game does go late enough that Razor becomes incredibly tanky, you could just double E-Blade him. So you've got your E-Blade, then Tinker E-Blades, then you E-Blade him again. Looks like Carl decided to screw it, can't go for E-Blade, just has a value Ghost Scepter to keep himself alive. Decided to max out his Dagon, so they know they're going to be fighting very early on, since NV, they're not going to rest on the laurels and wait for ICLEN to be able to continue farming. They have to continue to go for these pickoffs, continue to go for these towers, and try to break high ground. They've got about a 4-minute window before the game really starts to slip out of their control, because their draft starts to plateau. Especially with the Pipe pickup on Visage, it does make a lot of sense, because there's a huge amount of magic damage coming up from them. But of course, the drawback of the Pipe, especially a Pipe on a hero like a Visage, is you have to use it before you go in. It's like putting on a condom. If you don't put it on before you go in, completely useless. The mech, you could use it reactively, and so even if the enemy team jump on you, so long as the mech carrier doesn't die, or so long as your teammates don't immediately get killed before the mech goes off, you're good to go. Top Xeno actually replicated up, so he's going to be sent out to try to draw some spells out. They could choose to go on them, they don't know that's real. Looks like ESPX wastes the Electric Vortex, decides to commit to it, wastes the Orchid as well. Replicate is very tricky, because the illusion, unlike every other illusion ability, they take 100% damage as opposed to 300, and so it's very easy to be a mind game up an enemy like that. So it's the added advantage of the Morphling. You can use Morphling as a pseudo counter to Viper, because if you replicate the Viper and hit him, Corrosive Skin will proc on the Viper onto the replicate, that will then proc Corrosive Skin back onto Viper, and so Viper will always be snared. And because it's a replicate, you don't really give a damn, the replicate's snared. Eyes of Storm and Massive Moon can use, they have to defend it, so they lose high ground, and they are able to take this game. So it's still a very close game for both teams. Stuck on the turn of the chicken, gusted back, Ladder to stand his ground, Pengu comes in, unfortunately silence immediately, fantastic Orchid coming up from him. He does get the Ravage off as the Kraken Shell purges off, does catch out 3, Death One's doing a huge amount of work, should be able to bring down Moves Honk, standing his ground at BKB, but he's been caught out, he's left last man standing, Carl blinks on top of him to be the body block, Stuck on these has another waveform available, and Untamed cleans him up. So ICLEN, despite being behind in gold and in experience, able to turn the tide. 2,500 gold lead, now in favor of Envy as opposed to 5,000, 2,500 experience lead, and with that, Tink immediately BOT's top to imply square pushing presence. They still have tail 1s up, they're pinging up mids, they're going to go for an all-in push in the mid lane to try to force their buyback over on Honk, but most likely, probably not going to be buyback mid, at least do a fair amount of chip damage. Looks like Familiars are going to be scouting out Roshan, and it all boils down to the initiation power of ICLEN. Pengu was able to really set up that fight, even though he got immediately orchided, because ESPX chose to hit him and pop the Kraken Shell. Is the reason why Titan is banned is he's always guaranteed to get a Ravage. If you have a Blink Dagger, it doesn't matter if they stun you, there's no bit, unless they doom you, a Kraken Shell will be the target off. And so you're guaranteed to get that Ravager. It's the reason why Tidehunter players choose to max the Cracker Gel as early as possible. So it decreases the HP buffer. Nada gets cleaned up by the Wraith Fire Blast. Carl being able to style all over him with that Dagon. Moves coming in as well. He's going to be very careful. Got a buyback now coming up from Ladger. They do breach it. ESPX zip all the way in from the fountain comes in. He's going over on top Dino. Pops that BKB. Suck on these dice. The Eye of the Storm. Looks like no reincarnates available. Top Dino should be taking fall. And Morphling able to replicate himself on out there. So NV barely able to hold on to it. Carl as well takes a fall. And he goes on top of Honk, but Honk pops some arms. Scary and starts smacking him.
Oh, that's got to hurt.
So throws coming out from both teams. And it's a very even game. The team that's able to catch out. If they catch out Carl without buyback, they can breach high ground. Since they don't have Ravage available yet, Orchid will be up in 200. Sorry, not Orchid. Refresher will be up in 250 more gold for the Tidehunter. So they do have the double Ravage to deal with. But the drawback to going Refresher Orb on Tidehunter is when you have the level 3 Ravage, you just barely have enough mana to be able to use the Ravage, use the Refresher Orb, and Ravage again. So it means that you can't use an X Smash, you can't use a Gus, otherwise you're going to be out of mana. And so it just turns Tide into a one-trick pony, which in this case is fine because you've got the team fighting presence coming out from, well, I say that, Tanko actually gets called out of position and killed. And you don't, because you've got the damage coming out from the Tinker and from the Morphling, you just need to provide that lockdown. But because Tidehunter's Anchor Smash does do a huge amount of work, it's a bit of a risky trade-off. Back on these, goes over and Ladger. The Unstable Current, able to poach him off, and the Eye of the Storm zoning him out quite effectively. Got 5 charges already, loses 5 armor. And the advantage on the Razor up against the Wraith King is Wraith King's always going to be eating a huge amount of damage from the Razor, just because if he tries to stun him, he's snared for 2 seconds with the poach. And Ladger slow sieging, he's doing everything he can to try the whole breach that high ground. Suck on these guys, he maxes out the damage. That Blade Mail doing a lot of work though. They're able to get a return kill, untamed, turn to a pick. ESPX is dropping everything he can. They're able to drop 2. Reincarnate's coming in for Suck on these. Got that blink to get available. ESPX should be a zip on himself on out of there. Suck on these unfortunately gets fogged out, throws out a Wraith Fire Blast over Moops, and Moops, he's going to be the one taking all the hatred from the enemy team. He does die to the dot damage, so they do able to successfully hold on to their melee racks, and the next Roshan engagement should be to swing a tide, because despite the golden experience lead, it's a very slight lead for both teams. So whoever's able to win the next fight, if they're able to get Roshan, it guarantees that you should be able to win this engagement. It looks like Morphling actually opted to go for Man style, so going for more of a traditional right-click build over the Morphling. The advantage of that is it gives you a lot of pushing power, and Morphling does right-click exceptionally hard since he got 1.6 base attack time. The drawback is, once again, you lose that Alpha Strike capability, but I suppose they assume that Tinker can provide that initial burst damage, so they just need Morphling to provide a lot of right-clicking power. So the drawback of the Shotgun Morph is you can't really engage. Since you want to have as many stats and agi as possible, you have very low HP, so you want to hang back, initiate with the E-Blade, and then try to, if you're not able to kill someone immediately, you can't just run and start right-clicking people. Unless your right-clicking support who can't really do anything to deal with you. They're able to take that first little racks at the back of that. As Madja, no buyback available. And ICLEN are going to immediately back themselves back on. They don't want to overcommit, because they know what happens when you overcommit. The advantage of the Drow Ranger, though, is she could activate the Precision Aura whenever they catapult the siege units up. And they could use that to continuously apply chip damage over to the bot lane. Looks like they're grouping up for Roshan. Roshan is up, they're going to try to take it. And while that's happening, Moops using his familiars to try to take out the range racks. They actually might be able to do so. And ICLEN, they're not taking the chance, they immediately back off. So Drow can pop the Precision Aura right now, if she wants to. And the Familiars can go and try to clean them up. But Carl immediately spamming at the march to be a drive off to Familiars. Going in on them, he actually should be able to bring down 1, if not 2. Looks like Familiar immediately resummon coming out. So very surprised they opted not to go for the Aghanim Scepter since you've got that synergy coming in with the Precision Aura. But looks like NV should be able to take that Roshan. Fairly uncontested. They are coming in now. Suckunese comes and pops that Blade Mail. He immediately gets turned into a chicken. Ladger goes in. He pops the Eye of the Storm. Massive Bomb can use great 3-man Ravage. He's got that Refresher Orb, so he's able to get that too. Moves immediately drops. Looks like Honk also took a fall. Buyback coming up from Nada. ESPX stun locked to all hell. He's just barely able to zip himself on there. He zips himself again so he doesn't die to the dot damage. Suckunese and Morphling are able to bring down Ladger. They farm up the Mass Serpent Wards. They don't have buyback up on Ladger. Once again, what it boils down to is they're going to take that Roshan. So great disengage and re-engage coming up from ICLEN. Pengu using that, showing off the double refresh ult. He noticed that he didn't use any abilities aside from the Ravage, since he knew that he wouldn't have enough mana to get a throw out even the Anchor Smash. So he's able to get that double Ravage set it up. He called out 3 heroes twice, so able to immediately start a fight on favorable terms. And so MV, despite having a very powerful drop, because they lack the initiation, it becomes very difficult for them to be able to win these fights. even though they have the golden experience lead, although golden experience is now starting to move in favor of ICLEN, just from that one fight, they've now got a 10,000 experience lead, and you've got about 1,000 gold lead, which is fairly negligible. It's the experience lead, it's a really critical factor. So it just goes to show you what happens if you let the game go late, and the importance of initiation. So NV, because they opted for a bit of a pocket strat with the Drow Ranger Visage combo, and despite Ladja and the Honk having a very good time in their lanes, the Storm's through because he can't zip in on his own. He needs someone there to back him up. It's very difficult to pick off the Tinker. Suck on these, jumps in, he's got Reincarnate, so he doesn't really give a damn. He's got level 3 Reincarnate as well. So he's got a 60-second cooldown on Reincarnate if he does. He gets Soul Assumption down. And looks like he chopped cheese to be able to keep himself back. Hell and Hardy. Man-style illusions doing a lot of split pushing over on that range racks. So they're able to slow siege. They should be able to hold on to their seconds in their racks, and ICLEN are taking no chances. They back off. They know that the game is in their hands because they've got the late game draft. All they have to do is not throw. So they're gonna take what they can, back off immediately, choose not to overcommit. Looks like E-Blade is now up for Tinker. He wants to hold on to buyback as well. Because the only way Envy can try to win this game is if they catch out Carl outside the base and catch him without buyback. He's got buyback now, so long as he's able to get one kill before he dies. Since I believe he's got the majority of his gold is in reliable gold. Yeah, he's got enough reliable gold that he should be the buyback if he dies. E-Blade's now available, and so the lineup of ICLEN looking very scary. Tinker's now reached the point of critical mass, where not only is it difficult to kill him with the Boots of Travels as well as the Blink Dagger, he's now got enough damage that he's guaranteed to be a starter fight 4v5. So even though they don't have a shotgun coming in from Morph, he's acting more as a conventional right-click carry then, and he's more than happy to do so since he still does do a huge amount of magic damage with the Adaptive Strike, since he could always choose to Adaptive Strike whatever target Carl is E-Bladed. Since the E-Blade ethereal form does amplifies magic damage from everyone. Also works both ways. So if Morphling E-Blade someone gets Soul Assumption, he's going to be taking extra damage. For the smoke rotation coming in from NV, they really need to go for a pick off. And they're picking out Carl. Carl's been spotted out with the Ghost Step. They're going on him. Looks like Nana Blinks as well as ESPX. They should be able to bring down Carl. Carl does have buyback though, but he might be forced to expend it. NV, they just bought themselves a window of opportunity. This is the advantage of the lineup. They've got very powerful pick off power. Since they've got the Storm Spirit to be out these ganks, moves can be everywhere with the familiars. They still have held on to their tier 1, the bottom lane. So I was talking about this tower being the lowest priority tower, and yet this is the only tier 1 tower still left in the game, because neither team is really valuing it too much. Honk looks like he's been going towards a butterfly. They're stacking as much agi as possible to amp up that precision aura. Since when he's able to use that to be the split push, so would like to see Honk using his precision aura a lot more to be able to help facilitate pushes, or to push out the creep waves when you're fighting the lane. So that way, just through split pushing presence, creeps are able to apply damage to towers. Pengu, some high level plays coming up from him, as him and Soccer D is taking a little picnic, hiding up in the ramp. They're essentially acting as living wards, even though they do have a ward place there. Soccer D's been pinged out. Now picked up a Heaven's Elbow, so his sole job is to shut down Ladja, since Ladja's not going to be going for a BKB anytime soon. And so even though the either storm damage is going to be enough, being able to disable his right click damage, which is fairly substantial with that precision aura, is going to be a great boon. Or they can at least wait until Honk his BKB wears off, it's only 6 seconds now, and catch our Drow Ranger. Since Drow Ranger, unlike the Razor, he can't do anything, he can't hit people. Cyclone comes in, immediately drawing as much fire as possible. Tangle comes in, catches out the entire team with a 5-man Ravage. Untamed goes in with 2, he pops the refresher up, he goes around another Ravage, catches out 3 again, it catches out 4 actually, Moop's caught out. They clean up Honk, Ladja taking a huge amount of focus fire. Cyclone D's got Reincarnate, hasn't even used it yet. The E-Blade's coming online, Untamed, Adapt Strike from the face, and now an E-Blade, Dagon combination comes, and they completely wipe Envy. ICLEN, the lineup, they've reached the point of no return, what's difficult for NB to be able to try to win this. Just because Tinker, he's still got buyback available, he didn't have to buy back for that. And the only way they could try to break high ground and take a set of ranks is if they kill Tinker outside the base and catch him without buyback. So all Tinker has to do is just have money for buyback. Even if he gets caught out of position, so long as he has enough money for buyback, he's going to place enough pressure on MV that's going to be difficult for them to try to end the game. And ICLEN just going right for tier 4s. They want to clean up that melee racks over the top lane. So they've got 2 lanes of racks pushing in at once. And then you can just go for tier 4. Since they've got the tier 1 still up in the bottom lane, looks like Carl, he's going to be split pushing the bottom lane. Apply some pressure. But because they've got a 20-second window before Honk is online, and because Ladja, he's dead for 40 seconds. They do have buyback available on Drow, but he does want a buyback at this early on, especially since you don't have buyback on Ladja. They're going for tier 4s, and this could be game. Carl comes in, he blades ESPX. ESPX immediately zips on home. So it really does boil down to the lack of initiation over at NV, because they have a great pickup power. Carl actually calls himself out of position, pops the BKB over at ESPX, and doing everything he can to try to bring down Carl. Carl does have buyback though. Pengu comes in, doesn't have Ravage. So they are able to clean up 1. They actually are defending very nicely. Circle G's actually fountain diving, so that's not your base. Let's turn around, kill Moops. So Sati's easier prey. He's got that reincarnate though, so he's just buying space while they start smacking at your tier 4s. Untamed, he's the real threat. Looks like he did opt for E-Blade, so he's got an E-Blade of his own. The double shotgun. They're locking down Suck on these, but they're ignoring him. He's not the priority target. They don't really care if they kill him. What they really care about is Untamed. Untamed, his Replicate's actually on cooldown. He does have the Aegis. They might be able to bring him down. Ladger, he's backing himself off. His Untamed stands his ground. Shotguns him in the face. Stuck on these, let's get cleaned up by Shadow Shaman, so Shadow Shaman is able to bring him down. Untamed, very low armor. It's the power of the Eye of the Storm, especially with the Refresher ulti. Pengu does have Ravage yet. Cast of Justice, bouncing back and forth between Ladger. Untamed taking a fair amount of damage. Now turns with Chicken. Is the Shackle on top of him as well, so they should be able to bring him down, but he does have buyback. And so Envy, they have to go for a Hail Mary push through the mid lane, but there is buyback available for Carl and for Untamed, and Untamed immediately buys back. Carl, he's going to play a little bit more risky. He's going to wait for as long as possible. Morphling, if he wants to be really cheeky, he could replicate one of his allies when it's off cooldown, buy Boots of Travels, unfortunately he doesn't have enough gold for that, and just go straight for throne. Moves leading the charge, since Gravekeeper's Cloak only breaks on instances of hero damage, and so you can use Visage to tank towers. Looks like Suck on D's and Top Dino's supports have bought back. Carl is online in 10 seconds, and Envy, it's do or die. If they win this engagement, they're able to catch out at least the Morph Untamed without buyback. And Suck on these, he's got Reincarnate once again. The fourth is making the human rock, shotgun flies. Tengu gets a great 4-man round. He actually catches out the entire team once again. Tank wins love. Death Wall of the Aghanim Scepter completely destroys them. And that should be game. They don't have buyback up on ESPX. It's their only reliable way to be to catch out Carl. And Suck on D's going ham. He could YOLO and blink at their entire team because he knows that there's nothing they could do. If he dies, he's just going to play some Linkin Park, come back to life without Reincarnate, and start smacking you full. In fact, if he dies, it's actually better for his team if he dies because he's at least providing that 75% snare. And Envy, because they forced out buybacks, ICLEN, they don't really want to commit to this. They're still respecting Envy, because they know they're a very aggressive and very powerful team. You never want to make a mistake, because this is the drawback of if the game goes to late game. A single mistake's enough to end it. Honk, it's one E-Blade shotgun combo, almost dies off the back of that. Pops his Master Man, so Carl might have actually overextended. He's overstayed his welcome. Nada's coming in, he wants to catch him out with the blink, but Carl's blink actually be coming off cooldown a lot earlier. So the advantage of the Boots Travel move speed, so that level 3 rearm to 1 second rearm time. He's just gonna keep blinking himself on down there. So close but no Siggy. Nada really wanted that. Had 4-staff up as well. They do have the double Eye of the Storm coming off cooldown very shortly. But ICLEN, they decided to play it safe. They're going to go for the outer towers, get themselves a lot more gold. Since the tier 1 and tier 2 at this point, they're just giant sacks of gold waiting to be smacked open. A huge influx of gold, about 1,500 gold lead every single time for your team, every single time you smack down a tower. And Suck on D's leading the charge. Heaven's Halberd up on him. He is obscenely stacked for a 4 condition Wraith thing. So going to continue to persist through their bottom lane. And with 2 sets of racks down, they can't recover from Mega Greaves. Pengu, no Ravage up yet, so they're going to back off. They're playing it by the numbers. They don't want to give away anything for free. They don't want to put themselves in a situation where they might lose the game because of one misplay. And so this is why late game, it's a critical stage. It's a single mistake can decisively end the game, so you can see the difference between a lot of experienced pro teams, such as IG. They don't make a single mistake. That's the reason why they're so good in the competitive scenes. So why Death Wall is so effective from newbie as well as from Vici. As they shut out the enemy team, they take out all their tier 2s, they starve them with gold, take out all their map control, and then gradually just farm up the next set of items before committing in. They never want to overcommit, because that gives them a chance to be able to recover. They shut down any potential chance that the enemy team has to be able to recover and regain some kind of control of the game. And then once you're so far ahead that you know that's almost impossible for you to be able to lose that next engagement, then you go in. So it boils down to ICLEN getting that Tidehunter being pick up. So the first pick Tidehunter on Pengu, even though they were able to shut him down fairly effectively, just because Tidehunter's so damn effective in the engagements, Pengu's gotten 4 or 5-man ravages this game. So he's really been doing a massive amount of work over an NB. Because Suck on these goes in, waits for the enemy team to engage on him, and then Pengu comes up as a follow-up. So he's never initiating on his own. They're using Suck on these as a retard mech to blink in, draw as much fire as possible, get them to group. Since when he blinks on top of you, you either abandon the hero, in which case you start a fight, you start the next fight 4v5, because you can kill one of the supports, or you have to commit. And when they commit, then Pengu comes in and cleans up. Suck on these comes in now, goes over and moves, and enemy teams are forced to back off. Honk gets disarmed, pops the BKB, so he's able to at least survive the Ravage, and the Aghanim Scepter has Death Ward cleaning up. Skrillex up with that Death Ward, able to clean up too. Ladja, no buyback up on him. Suck on these going in. Now the drop mass over one's desperation. GG well played being called. And looks like ICLEN in the grudge match. Envy knocked them down to loser bracket. They pulled their way back up to the top. So they started from the bottom, now they're here. 48 minutes in, ICLEN, they're going to be moving into the next weekend. They're one of your top 8 teams. So GG well played to both of them. And I believe that should be it for today from my end. There will be the cast of 1v1 show match series starting at 9. So yours truly, as well as all the other casters from today, including Omega Kai, I Am a Rose, Gruck, who I believe was the caster for the E bracket, and so on. We'll be duking out 1v1 with open mic, so there'll be a lot of trash talking coming. So thank you for listening. I'm 49, community shoutcaster for the Aspect of Gaming, Dota 2 Community Crackdown. You can follow me on Twitter, 49Dota, on Twitch, just 49, and on YouTube. I'll be looking to upload VODs for the first weekend, so I think there was a bit of an issue with the Steam ticket, so these games aren't going to be available through the ticket for whatever reason, but the next weekend should be available, so I'll look to upload VODs sometime throughout the week. But that should be it for now. Thank you for watching, stay tuned for more.